Why is my child so anxious? It's a question I get asked a lot, but here's the thing, I don't have kids and these days I don't work with kids. However, I know a man who does. This week I was fortunate enough to get the chance to speak with him about this very topic. I'm Tim Box, and in this video I'm going to be talking with the brilliant Howard Cooper and taking advantage of his experience of working with children to help relieve their anxiety. So welcome back to my channel, or if this is your first time, I'm Tim Box. I'm a mind coach and I do a lot of work helping people get control of anxiety. But I seldom talk about how we might help children because I don't work in that area. So in this video, the first in a series of 3, I'm going to chat with a good friend and an expert when it comes to working with children, Howard Cooper. Before we go any further, please hit that like button and why not subscribe for mind coaching and anxiety advice videos every week. I have noticed, and people have mentioned this to me, that there's a lot of kids having issues with high anxiety lately in these sort of modern times. Do we think there's a reason for that?
Yeah, I think there's loads of reasons for it, and it's a multifaceted answer. And I'm pleased I've got the word multifaceted into an interview at this point in time so early.
Very well done.
Thank you. No, in all seriousness, look, I mean, on the face of it, it's not a surprise. We're living through a global pandemic. And the question is not, I think, just about why are children having more anxiety, but why, I mean, we're all having more anxiety. And of course, children are just a subset of that. And children they pick up and they model and they mirror adults. They look up to us to learn how should they be responding. And it's that classic old adage of, if a baby bangs their head, they don't know how to respond. They look up. They see his mum crying, and if mum cries, they know to cry. So I think there's been a lot of that. Children in a time of unprecedented uncertainty, looking up to other people going, like, what do we do? How do we respond to this? So
we're almost saying that it's a reflection of our own increased levels of anxiety that the kids are inevitably picking up on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's some other things as well that go beyond just pandemic. And put it this way. Children are taught from a very early age, we're kind of wiring them up increasingly so to have to respond well and to only be interested in fast-paced, flashing colors. I mean, I don't want to say YouTube because YouTube's great.
Here we are. Awesome. Yeah, lovely.
Right. Awesome. But there is an age appropriateness about it. But editing these days is fast-paced, flashing colors. Kids are watching TV from an early age. They're playing with iPads. They're playing with phones. And they're wiring their brains up to be like, oh, I need all this fast-paced stuff happening on outside to engage me. And suddenly they go to school, for example, and you just get a teacher talking to them and they're like, oh, this doesn't feel nice. I don't like this.
Yeah, so it almost doesn't suit how they've been programmed to take information in.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing as well is that I think that physiologically speaking, look, when we were cavemen, back in days gone by, what would we do? We'd sit out looking out at the savannah, surveying the land in that kind of relaxed, open kind of space of and we can kind of just survey the land because there's no threat. But if you see movement in the distance, what do? Your vision goes vroomf, and you focus in on the movement because what you're really doing unconsciously is assessing, is that thing a threat to me? So there is kind of a psychophysiological response of narrow focused field of vision, zooming in on one thing particularly, which kind of triggers adrenaline and cortisol increases and anxiety. So what do we do nowadays? How often do kids just sit there surveying the savannah? They don't. What we do is we go here and we give them a screen and we tell them to, and they look at the screen or they look at the computer or they look at the TV and they do a lot of what I would call narrow focused attention. Which may be, and it's just a theory, so don't take my word for it, but it's again, one of the thoughts that I've had. Are we wiring them up to kind of have these, stay in this psychophysiological state of high alert?
Yeah, well, I think I've heard people talk about this before, where the excessive stimuli from our phones and the constant prompting and the constant little beeps and going on, every new stuff coming in, it's kind of asking our brain to do things that we haven't yet evolved to do. I mean, it takes, roughly 40,000 years for our brains to take the next evolutionary step, and yet technology has just, advance exponentially in that period. And I guess this brings me on to the question I often get asked, which is, do we think it's going to get any better? Are we in a phase because of the pandemic, or do we think this is just going to increase in terms of kids struggling to deal with the way the world is?
It's a great question. I don't have the answer, but I do think it can get better. But it starts with adults. It starts with people realizing that how they respond and how we lead and how we show children how to live and how to be resilient needs, I think, is where we need to start so that we can demonstrate resilience. There's this weird thing that happens in schools all around where you have, put it this way, teacher asks a question, and the kid goes, well, what's the answer? You say to the kid, and the kid goes, I don't know. And all the other kids laugh. In other words, what we do is we have a education system where we almost, we get people to be afraid and think that not knowing is bad and punishable and you should be made fun of if you don't know stuff. But why? Uncertainty, can we not embrace uncertainty? If we can teach kids and ourselves to be more comfortable with not knowing and not having to have all the answers straight away, I think that's a good place to start. Yeah.
Well, also, I suppose there's that thing. I'm always talking about this with clients that making mistakes is how we learn. So if we don't beat ourselves up for those mistakes and we just embrace them as part of the learning process, we tend to, we advance, we educate ourselves, we become more knowledgeable, more resourceful fairly quickly. It's only the energy we spend sort of castigating ourselves for doing things wrong that kind of mutes all of that natural learning response,
Right. Absolutely. I totally agree. So, but I think, do
you think we need to be changing the way we address, anxiety and emotional health and mental health as it is in schools? Do we need to change what we're doing there then?
I do. And I think fundamentally it comes down to moving away from what I would call a results-based academic system.
Okay.
If you look at the work of people like Carol Dweck from the University of Stanford, who developed this thing called growth mindset. And it was this idea that, and I'll give you a quick example of this, she talks about and refers to that we shouldn't call our kids smart and keep calling our kids, oh, well done, you're so smart, you're so clever, because here's what happens. Initially, it works well. They go, oh, I'm so clever, I'm so brilliant, I'm so wonderful.
Yeah.
But then what they do is they start thinking that the reason that they get good feelings inside and rewarded is just from their innate ability of being smart. It becomes part and parcel of their identity. Okay. And that's fine until they have a task or something happens at school that's difficult.
Yeah, so they reach their limit sort of thing. Yeah.
Right. And now it's like, if I fail this, it's not just I didn't do well. If I fail this, my whole identity of being smart is questioned. I won't know who I am anymore. So a lot of the kids that I've dealt with in the past, often it kind of smacks of this idea of they have worry about school. Am I going to do well enough at school? I'm so nervous. What if other people are better than me at certain things?
Yeah.
And I think it's often that, now I'm not saying don't praise our kids. That's not what she's saying, but we should praise them for hard work, for attainment. It's that ability to go, yeah, I screwed up, or yes, I didn't get the result first time. But the thing that I was really proud of you for or amazed at was how you picked yourself back up and how you applied yourself anyway.
Yeah, so you're teaching resilience as opposed to just relying on what the gifts that you've been given kind of thing.
Right. So I think, taking that back to school, we should be okay, or kids should be encouraged to not know, or to be okay with not knowing. It should be an environment where it becomes open to talk about emotional. They should, I would say, increase their emotional vocabulary.
Yeah. See, this brings me on to something that I think I sort of do care fairly passionately about, which is we should also be taught what our emotions mean and why we feel them and what the purpose of them is. Because I know that when I was younger, if I'd have understood why I felt certain ways, I wouldn't have struggled with those feelings quite so much, and probably would have, saved myself a fair amount of heartache in the process of it. But so do you think we should be getting emotional education, as it were?
100%. And also it would help a lot of kids to realize that they're not alone. Because so many children feel like, I often have kids who say, why is it just me? Why is it only me that feels this way? And the reality of it is, if you had a bunch of young kids who all felt okay and open and willing to talk about this stuff, they'd probably all see that it was all of them.
Yeah, right.
And it would immediately take away that it's just me, I'm abnormal, there's something wrong with me. And I think that really helps with self-rating.
Yeah. I think that's very true, isn't it? I think a lot of the time we don't talk about it because, first of all, it's not something that people talk about, but because we assume that we're declaring a weakness or we're going to isolate ourselves from the people around us. And we're encouraged to hide that sort of stuff, aren't we?
Absolutely. But it makes sense. I mean, from an evolutionary perspective, going back to being, a hunter-gatherer living in a tribe, tribe would be in the middle of nowhere and we'd have 50 people in our tribe. And if you were the weak link or you were vulnerable or you were exiled or you didn't fit in, you'd go out. That would be pretty much certain death.
Yeah, of course.
But now it's not the same.
No, exactly.
We just have this outdated piece of software that's running.
It can feel that way at school, though, can't it? It can feel like if we get rejected and ostracized, that is the end of our little world, and life is now going to be much harder and survival is going to be much harder because we definitely have that impression, don't we, of our school days.
Hey, I hope this video has been of value. I'll put a link to Howard's channel in the description box, so be sure to check that out. Howard also has a book out called The Rustle of Leaves, which I would urge any parent who wants to help their child understand and get control of anxiety to grab a copy of. Look out for parts 2 and 3 of this interview coming in the next week or two as we go on to discuss the best ways to help our kids reduce their anxiety levels and also how we deal with the pressures of trying to be the very best parent we can be. Let me know if you've enjoyed this video by commenting down below. Please hit that thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for weekly mind management tips and anxiety advice. But that's it for now. I'm Tim Box, Mind Coach. Always remember to be kind to your mind, and I'll see you next time.